Hey there, Wargamers. Austin here with Brush for Hire, and today I want to introduce a new format of video that I'd like to start doing some occasionally, if this works out well. This is going to be something that's a little bit more personal for me. I know that many of you have seen me do tons of other videos in the past, presenting things or painting miniatures or sculpting things or many other aspects to the hobby. And those things are all very important to me, and I love doing them. But another important aspect of my personality, and we're actually going to talk about personality right now, is something that I definitely identified from more recently, within the last few years, taking the Myers-Briggs personality test, which I am an ENTP, which, for those of you who are not familiar with, among other things, essentially means that I really like to argue about things. Not necessarily in a confrontational way, but I love debating, of analyzing concepts and trying to poke and prod at them until I have, pulled, for lack of a better phrase, pulled all the meat off the bones, till I've looked at it from every angle. I've analyzed all of the pros and cons to things, and it's not necessarily that I want to argue for the thing that I feel most strongly about, but a lot of times I tend to argue for the thing that isn't well represented. So if somebody says, I definitely think point A, I will almost always say, well, let's look at it from point B, and go at it from there and try to have a debate about, is point A a lot better than point B? Or can we not find something worthwhile in point B? So anyway, enough of the introduction. I think you guys kind of get the idea of what I want to do here. I'm planning on introducing a topic and then talking about both sides of it. And you guys can choose to jump in on this conversation in the comments section. Tell me what you think about it, and if you've got some really strong opinions on it one way or the other, or if there's things that I missed completely or completely messed up. Just I said it wrong, I messed it up, I misrepresented facts or something. Please feel free to call me out. This is what this is for. This is a public conversation. I won't even call it a debate. I don't want it to be a mean, aggressive thing. I love to have conversations with people about things that I care about, and wargaming and gaming in general is definitely one of those things. So today's topic is something that I've just realized is actually becoming quite controversial, and that is the Kickstarter from Palladium Books and Ninja Division, the Robotech Kickstarter, which I actually backed. I'm really interested in getting those models. I knew that they were having some difficulties, but I didn't know to what degree the community was really getting up in arms about some of this. And it's pretty split down the middle, it seems like, or at least there's a very vocal minority. In the last week, there's been a couple of updates, and it's really just absolutely exploded. And the thing that caught my attention was this photo right here. This is a picture of one of the Spartan robots. Now, far from what its name would connote, this looks fairly far from Spartan. This is a ton of parts for just one model. This is, I think if I correctly counted, it's either 33 or 34 parts. Feel free to pause the video and take a look for yourself. Now, before we get too far into this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of split this up into pros and cons. I'm going to, not that I'm trying to give this a review or anything, it's not, the products aren't even to market yet, so I can't really give it a proper review, but I want to split my arguments down into the I'm for it and I'm against it. So let's start with the fun stuff. Let's turn on the angry face, and we will look at this just from the most antagonistic, malicious standpoint, and just try to tear it apart completely. And we're going to be basing a lot of our information on the things that have been presented on the Kickstarter and in the Kickstarter comments. So let's get started. Whoop, no. So in this picture, we have an absolute buttload of parts. This is way too many pieces for a single model. Now these models don't stand but more than an inch and a half to, I think it's maybe 2 inches tall. Can you imagine trying to put together all these parts? You've got each of those leg pieces at the bottom are the halves of one leg. There's no reason to have this many pieces to not be able to do this. Now this is going to be done in hard plastic, so I get it. There are certain things that you can't undercut, but there's got to be a better way to make these models. Games Workshop finds ways around this all the time, and they work nearly exclusively in hard plastic now, with the exception of their legacy fine cast parts. Now, let's look at these things put together. This is a picture of, I believe, one of the Destroids. I'm not 100% sure on all of my terminology for which things which are. These may actually be the Spartans here. But you can see that the mold lines or the gaps between the parts are huge. They're absolutely massive. It is heinous how big these gaps are. It's going to take you forever not only to put the thing together, but then to fill in all these gaps is going to be atrocious. Now, this is quite the upset for a number of people. Let's look at the total number of backers here on the Kickstarter page. There were 5,342 backers to this, grossing $1,442,312 raised for this project. That is a huge sum of money. I recently ran a Kickstarter in the last year, and we managed to get a few $1,000s, and it was great. I can't imagine running something on this scale, and to have this many people upset with you, you have to be doing something wrong. This is, just a gross misrepresentation of what the product was going to be. No other miniatures company has models of that scale that are in that many pieces. It's going to be literally hours and hours of putting smaller than thumbnail size pieces together, trying to match up flat faces so that they'll actually fit together, and then having to putty everything again because you couldn't even get the parts right. So, I mean, that really feels to me like it's going to be very problematic. Not to mention for people like me, where I have backed at the several $100 level, I think that I have like a few hundred of these to put together. That's going to be an unbelievable feat of persistence. It's just too much to do. Now, their justification for this was that there were parts that would have had a double overhang, where you have an undercut and then another thing undercut under that. So really what you'd have, or a flat face that has a bump coming out and then a flat spot and then another bump coming out. So what they had to do was they had to break it in half so that you could have the two halves of the molds coming together to eliminate that undercut. You couldn't just change up the face a little bit? You couldn't just eliminate some of those grooves? That's it seems like a problem that could have been overcome with some creative engineering that was instead just done in the only way they knew how. That is a less mature approach to this problem. It's like the first thing I ever designed for the laser cutter that I use for a lot of our products was absolutely grotesque. It was terrible trying to put the file together. Everything was just sort of like hanging together by a thread, and yeah, it came out okay, but it was a really weak attempt at trying to put together parts to make a polished product, when in fact there were much better ways that me, a much more experienced laser technician at this point, would never do now. Things that I did then I would never do again, because it was so impractical to engineer them that way. Alright, so we've said some pretty harsh things about Palladium Books and Ninja Studios models now. Let's turn off the frowny face And let's go for the counter argument here. And there are plenty of points that I'm just glossing over here. I'm just picking out the low-hanging fruit in the hopes that you guys will bring up other topics and we can continue this conversation. So, some of the things that I said in my negative Nancy routine here were that we have I keep clicking the wrong button there. That we have a ton of parts. Part of me says this is the work of somebody who doesn't know how to engineer these parts, but I would much rather see them break these into multiple parts than to make something that looks inferior. Now, I think that there are other ways that they could have broken these down that would have produced a more easy to put together model, but I think that sticking to exactly what the source material, the Robotech anime presents as the final aesthetic is definitely an admirable and lofty goal. Now, I think that a piece of information that I intentionally omitted at the beginning was these are pre-production prototypes that they're showing off. A lot of people are looking at these and saying, oh my gosh, these are going to be the worst models ever. But they're pre-production prototypes. They are, I know that maybe they should have had something a little bit more final, or really express that, trying to mitigate people's expectations on what this is in comparison to what the final product will be. That said, these are all 3D printed. They're all 3D printed pre-production prototypes. So this isn't even close to what the final casts are going to look like. When you do hard plastic injection, you're just, it's a completely different beast. You're going to have little to no warping ever in your pieces, so far as I can tell. I'm not a hard plastic caster, so I can't tell you for certain, but all of the hard plastic stuff has fit together really nicely if the models or the molds were made well. So pretty much everything from Games Workshop that's come out recently, like within the last few years, has all fit together really beautifully. The other thing is that with hard plastic, if they're breaking into this many pieces, they're probably going to be doing some keying, which means that you'll have little notches that fit together, so you don't have to line it up perfectly for it to line up perfectly. It'll do a lot of the lining up on its own. Also, they're probably not going to let these pieces be solid. They're going to be hollow, which means that they're almost going to have keying to make that fit together well. So, I think that there will likely be much smaller gaps, if any, on the final products, because right here, this is pretty atrocious. And this is one of the pictures taken directly from the Kickstarter. So, do I think that this is going to be that big an issue when it comes to the final product? No. But do I also think that they should have released this as a major update for their Kickstarter to get people excited about it? Also, no. You put your best foot forward. Now, kind of backtracking here, one thing that I will say that probably should have gone under the negative category is that they are currently, we're almost at the end of March right now, and they were anticipating delivering December of last year. So they're already a full 3 months past their due date. Now, fairly early on, they said, we're having some production problems with, what did they say? I can't even remember what they said. Basically, we're having production problems. We're going to run long here. But it seems that we keep getting pre-production prototypes of things that are just coming off the press for prototyping 3 months after we were supposed to have product in our hands. I don't know all the ins and outs of the issues that they were having, but that seems a little bit on the unacceptable side. I don't think that type of deadline ignoring is really acceptable. Now, granted, I don't have a whole lot of room to speak. I've had some we like I said before, we ran a Kickstarter for products that we did. We did actually end up delivering a few weeks past our deadline, but that's only a few weeks. This is months and months. And we did have some challenges resolving a few issues for a few people. We do have a few lingering things to tidy up with the Kickstarter that we ran, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Palladium games. I get sidetracked real easily, so I got to stay on topic here. But yeah, in fact, in some of the other pictures that they're showing of the CAD models, you can see where the final products will be hollow and have keys. So I think that a lot of the people who are commenting on this that are really the big naysayers really are a vocal minority, and probably the vast majority of the rest of the backers can see this project for what it is. Now, I feel generally positive about the project, but I do have some reservations about just how many pieces there are for this thing. I mean, it's going to be absolutely tremendous amounts of just sacks of tiny, almost unidentifiable parts, I think. But anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up here before I just keep rambling on about this project. Let me know what you think about this format of video. Is it interesting for you? Is it something that you're listening to while you're painting your own stuff? Leave us some comments below. Give us a like if you enjoyed this. That'll help me sort of determine whether or not to keep on with this format or not. If you have some ideas for this format, because right now it's sort of an untitled work, give me a comment about that too. So if you haven't subscribed before yet, whatever. Can't edit this. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that if you want to catch the rest of our videos. And until next time, happy wargaming.